Valerie Chemquat, my friend for many years from Tsawwassen, my treaty sister. Always glad to have you here. You bring a tremendous energy to everything that you do. Valerie's bio is in the kits for those of you who don't know her, but Valerie has done so many things with her community and elsewhere. She is currently on the Executive Council. I understand you're Squawkwell speaker for your legislature as well, has worked as self-government advisor for Not-So-Much Tribal Council, also was the manager or director of governance, I'm going to mess it up, for her own nation. She has been involved in treaties since the time of negotiation. So Valerie comes with a great deal of experience and background in this, and I always love to listen to you, Valerie. So let's just get you going. Over to you.
Hajka, thank you so much, Angela. Thank you to you for inviting me and to the Treaty Commission for organizing this event. I want to extend Hajka to Lydia for starting us off in a good way. I really appreciate that, and thank you for the good words and the good prayers to give us strength to do this, the work that we share together. I want to also say Hajka to my ancestors for never giving up and for holding on to our teachings, to our land, to our culture, so that we could carry them on, revive them, reclaim them today through the means that we see appropriate for each of our respective nations. For me, it was through our treaty process. I also want to say Hajka to my Tsawwassen elders who guided and supported us through the very arduous journey that you've heard from the previous presenters. I want to say a special Hajka to my Uncle Russell, former chief and counselor, who stated he was fearful that we may not be ready to self-govern ourselves, but he also said we could no longer be under the Indian Act. And I was sad to have him leave us 1 month before the effective day of our treaty for him to actually live free from the Indian Act, but his spirit continues with us. I also want to say thank you, Hajka, to all the relatives that we share these beautiful lands with, and that we work and play on and live in. I want to also say Hajka to the presenters that came before me, sharing your stories and your experiences. Yes, at times you caused me to flash back to the times. And cousin Melissa, I felt the exhaustion wash over me, much like it was, those many, many, many years ago. And yeah, so thank you for sharing those and for yeah, the clamming of just reliving some of those experiences. Was nice to have some reflection, but it also reminded me of how far we've come today and how much I love our people and our culture. And while my English name is Valerie Cross, my ancestral name is Chemquat, as you heard Angela say. This was my grandmother's grandmother, and Chemquat came from Squamish, and I have the great honor of carrying her name. My presentation today is about building a ratification team. And while our entire treaty team became the ratification team, my focus today will be primarily on the ratification committee. And I will say that it was the strong leadership with a clear vision that was key to our success. And I think that message has been stated throughout some of the other presentations. So while I was thinking about this, our presentation and ratification and really just changing our future, I thought about the time in 1914 when Tsawwassen Chief Harry Joe submitted his petition on behalf of the Tsawwassen people to the McKenna-McBride Commission, where they were reviewing the province's reserves, and how our chief argued so eloquently that the Tsawwassen people did not want to be forced into exile on a tiny reserve, and how he really advocated for all of us, and how we at the first half of the 20th century were ignored. The port was put in because they didn't think anybody lived where we are. Nobody's there. And and how things started to change. And I wanted to reflect on it to say, we did it, Joe. We did it, Chief Harry. We did it, especially because Chief Harry is Quintiltonot, our former chief negotiator, Kim Baird's great grandfather. So I wanted to just put that in there, that there is continuity in all the work that we do. And again, why I was thanking our ancestors for never giving up hope. So we did it, Chief Joe. So it all starts when finally, after all those years of negotiations, of all of those hot-fought battles, the offenses, the indignities, the compromises, the community engagement to get to the AIP, that on December 8th in 2006, we initialed that final agreement. But as much as we celebrated that, and we had to travel to promote all of the work that we had done in our treaty team, uh, we then had to schedule our vote, which was July 25th, 2007. And one of the key messages that I'll say now, and I'll say it again, is that all band members, and I'm using the old terms, all band members must be enrolled in the treaty to vote. So in order to have their voice on whether to accept the treaty or not to accept the treaty, in order to have a successful ratification, we had to have the work of enrollment. The key message, as I mentioned, is you had to be enrolled to vote. I want to mention that the voting threshold that was set was a supermajority, and the enrollment threshold was super high. We had to have 80% of our eligible voters to be enrolled in order to conduct a valid vote. And then the targets for the vote to be successful was a supermajority as well. So we had big work to get as many eligible band members enrolled in the treaty to actually be able to vote. So under Chapter 24, Clause 14, it states about the Ratification Committee. And while the Enrollment Committee was all of our Tsawwassen members and community members, 5 of us working together to have the enrollment of our members, the Ratification Committee was a tripart committee where we would have one member of Tsawwassen as a representative officially, one member from the province officially, and one member from the federal government officially. So it was important that we defined the roles. It was important that we created a ratification plan that was suited to Tsawwassen, and that it was clearly our vote, and they were our partners in the final agreement, but we had to make sure that we were the very first step in this ratification process. So we wanted to make sure that it was done in a good way, but also in a way that was going to work for our people. Identify the goals that we wanted to achieve, and that's where the thresholds came into play, the communication that we needed to use to make sure that people understood what it meant to be enrolled and to vote, and the timelines that we needed to achieve. So they were very aggressive goals. I was on both the enrollment committee and the ratification committee, so that allowed for continuity in that work. And I have to admit, God bless them, or somebody bless them, the provincial rep was a bit of a challenge at time, but the federal rep was more collaborative, so we were able to advance the work in a good way. But just like Roy said, there were some challenges, but I think it helped us get the work out in a good way, and we solved those challenges. But we figured out ways to ensure that Tsawwassen was leading this work. I think we had to be everywhere. The ratification committee and the enrollment committee had to be everywhere. We had to be everyone all at once. Not like the movie out there, everywhere, everyone all at once, but our own way to be everywhere, everyone, and all at once. And it's those wearing those multiple hats that we also had to put on in order to support the ratification process. The key thing was to make sure that every eligible voter had access to, 1, the information about the treaty, 2, had access to enroll, and ultimately had access to vote. So I think just keep pressing the advance button until I think there's about 5 or 6 of them. So there were some challenges with the ratification. As I mentioned, the timeline to vote, I'll cover that in my next slide. Explaining why people have to enroll. I'm a band member. Why do I have to enroll? And why do I have to enroll to vote? What happens if you don't enroll? And Angela mentioned it earlier, and I'll mention it again later in my slides. If people didn't they didn't enroll, that was counted as a no vote. And so we wanted to get every eligible band member to enroll first. Then we wanted to have every eligible voter vote. So there was a great deal of work, and we had to explain because people didn't understand what it meant to enroll. Then we had to deal with the myths about status. If I enroll, am I going to lose my status? What does it mean? And there were other myths that were connected with it, but this was one of the biggest ones. Is people thought they would lose their status, and as a result, there was that taxation question that. That if I'm losing my status, I'm going to lose my taxation. But no, the treaty is actually have some impacts on taxation, and we had to showcase how taxation benefited us as a whole by showcasing the revenue benefits of taxation and how we would plan to mitigate the impacts to our members. Because of the negotiation process, some of the challenges were as the members felt that we were being secretive, that we weren't sharing information about the treaty. But that's because the federal and provincial governments put sort of like a gag order on us, even from the December signing until we hit to February, where we weren't allowed to share anything until we actually were starting to engage with them. So that was unfortunate because it did not build a sense of trust with our members with respect to the treaty, and instead of being able to celebrate all of the successes that they had with the AIP and seeing the fruition of the negotiations from the AIP to where we are now, we had to sort of rebuild some of that trust. As I mentioned, our goal was to get 80% of our eligible voters enrolled, and that was a big and aggressive threshold. And then the supermajority for it to get it to pass, which is why we had to do everything, be everywhere, and share everything. So we had 6 months, and just keep it. I think it's going to be automated, this one. If not, just continue to press that. We had 6 months from February when we actually started to get together as a treaty team to create a plan, a communication plan, and an execution plan, and how to resource. I think that was a good comment about resourcing the money involved. That was a challenge in trying to get at that time TRMs, treaty-related measures, and to contribute to that plan, to get the province to contribute because they weren't contributing financially, so they were contributing in other ways by providing us photocopiers and phones and different things that would allow us to enhance. So we were really pushing them to be contributors because they were kind of in the back seat a little bit, and we needed them to be more of a forefront in contributing. We had some deep sharing about the treaty. Where were we making our concessions, and what were the true benefits, and what does each chapter mean to us, and how does that going to play out? So we ended up finalizing our constitution around April. And if memory serves me right, and you'll have to forgive me, that in March we had a membership code vote that failed. And so that was work that we were hoping that was going to be finalized early because the membership code was to be then transformed into the Membership Act. So once we finalized the Constitution, at the annual general meeting in July, we had to bring the membership code back to a vote. And that was like 2 weeks before the vote for our ratification. And so we really were just biting our nails, hoping that we had captured the membership's concerns with the membership code, that we had redrafted it in a way that satisfied them, and then bring it back to the vote and have that approval. It was a clause about some kind of adult adoption, if my memory serves me correct, and we just removed that, thinking that that's probably a rare occurrence, if at all, and that we could deal with it if it ever occurred. So the annual general meeting was the first of its kind that we had, where we shared information in detail about the treaty, and it was the final push for the treaty vote. And then on July 25th, as you may or may not know, was the vote. And the committee, the ratification committee and the enrollment committees did a great deal of work to make sure that everybody had ballots and that those ballots got back to the electoral officer. Much like Roy and Melissa had mentioned, we had a very comprehensive communication strategy to make sure that our members were as informed as possible, and that they had every opportunity and diverse opportunities to be informed. If you were a visual learner, we had DVDs. If you actually had some literacy issues, we had DVDs. If you were a more pictorial person, we had bulletins and newsletters. If you were wanting simple language, we had plain language documents. If you felt like you weren't having a voice in this part of saying that the treaty wasn't really what we needed, and if you also had a voice that you thought that I love this, I think this is the right idea, we opened it up for a critique, and we offered two members to write a formal critique based on facts. Why the treaty would be the right way and why the treaty might not be the right way. And then we publicized those outcomes so that every voice was heard. We had a treaty debate where we brought in people that were not for treaties in general, and then we brought in people that were for treaties, and we allowed them to have a public debate for our members, and so that they could hear all voices. We did a treaty information fair where there was information booths about each chapter and had prizes, and we always provided meals at every gathering. We did it like much like Roy said, we did a tour of the settlement lands so they could see what it was that our settlement lands were going to look like. We met with every single landowner, certificate of possession owners, with legal advisors, a member connector, and to explain what was going to change with their land ownership from CP to TFN fee simple. We engaged the youth in creative ways. We engaged the ALDOUT, what I would call the college and career group. The time we were allowed to meet at the local golf course and offer beer tickets. We don't do that anymore, but we were trying to get everybody out for a burger and a beer to hear about the treaty. We really tried to be very creative. We were very inclusive about the off reserve family meetings and gatherings. Much like Melissa said, I had not been raised on the land since I was 10, and I had been away for many years. And I came back doing this work, and I knew every single member by the time we finished this consultation. And it was a great way for me to connect and our team to connect. We had chapter consultation meetings every 2 weeks. We had constitution committee and membership meetings every 2 weeks. We did all kinds of specific topic papers, myth papers, all kinds of things to make sure that we were providing that kind of diverse. So translating that to now, DVDs turn into podcasts these days, so a little more modern technology, and so it's nice to see that evolution of transforming how to get information to people. And we didn't have things like Snapchat or Instagram, and I think even Facebook was pretty not really prevalent back then. So it really actually put us into the place where we really had to have face-to-face meetings with everybody, which is great. We hired what we called field workers to go out and connect with families and friends and share events with them and bring back questions. We created summaries from meetings to make sure that all their voices were heard. And then we fed it back to the community in anonymous format saying, this is what we've heard, so that people were confident that their voices were still heard. So tracking information, this was a critical aspect, and the province was very supportive in providing the tools to be able to track this information. It was very important that we had tracked all of the voters, who was enrolled, who wasn't enrolled, who's received a ballot, who said that they didn't receive one, and just really, making sure that that information was recorded and tracked. And with that, we had to create a procedures guide. Unfortunately, that ended up being a small distraction. The province got a little anal about this procedure guide, and we spent a little bit too much time on it because it um, I don't know, I can't remember all the details, but I just remember that I was a little flustered with that. And we ended up getting through it, of course, but it was something that I didn't think it was the best use of our time. But any event, making sure that our ratification team was trained up on all the processes, the checklists, and the procedures, that we were all on the same page of how we were going to do things, when we were going to do things, how we were going to connect, how we were going to report to each other, and making sure that the party reps were also being trained in the same way, in the same manner. I think that we were also wanted to make sure that there was clarity that when we were sending messaging to and bringing messages to our members, that status enrollment were two different things, and that under our membership code we have non-status members, and that did not exclude them from enrollment. In fact, if they were a band member, they were enrolled, and enrollment did not grant status, so that there was some clarity that these things were very, very different. Um, then also a central place for information. Keeping perfect records was imperative. The accuracy of these records, we could not afford to have anyone missed out, any incorrect information, any cause for any kind of appeal or anything. So accurate records was imperative, and that they were in one place. So there was one database, one spreadsheet, and that it didn't matter when everybody else was doing mailouts, they came to the ratification enrollment committees for that information. So that became, I can see now that organizations like nations like that Melissa was referring to, they have built on that in such a good way to make sure that they are tracking their information so that it can be used in the way that they intend it to be used. So talking now about building the ratification committee and the things that we really needed from our ratification team. We had the plan, and we were doing everything for the first time. So we had to create new tools, new engagement tools, and new processes. I think some of the key features that we were seeking out for the people that needed to be on our ratification team. Uh-oh, that's my big old dog. So I'll just shut the door there. Somebody must be at the door. Is that they had to be a really great communicator. They needed to be friendly. They needed to be trusted. They needed to be open, and they needed to be a listener. They needed to have some kind of they needed to be known in the community, and maybe have some influence in the community as well. So that was a key feature. We wanted our community members to trust the people that were going to be enrolling them, and actually, handling the the ballots and all of that, and the information that they were giving to each of our members. They had to know the families. We had to make sure that everybody was feeling comfortable to ask questions that they might not want to share. So that excellent communication. We also had to have members that could connect with different age groups and different geographic locations. So we had a younger member that could relate to the younger parts of the community. We had one person from our Tsawwassen community ratification team that was off land, so that we could have that connection. I want to say that the biggest key to the success to gathering families was our matriarchs. To gather our families, we would meet with our matriarchs, and we would say, Alvina, we need to meet with the family from the States, and we're going to meet at the buffet on this date, and we'd like for them to be able to do this and this and this. And I'll tell you, no one's going to say no to grandma or mom or auntie. And it was so successful to use, to have our matriarchs be supportive and wanting to help us with this. So that was something that really, also their encouragement. It was always very, very helpful. So that's why, you know, it was very important for our ratification team be connected. I mentioned already organization, they had to be so organized. We're creating systems, we're maintaining records, we were creating lists, we were creating tasks, and we had to have all this information organized in a way that we could access it to create reports back up to the chief negotiator, back up to council, back to the parties. And so we really need to have someone that was very detailed oriented and very organized. Um, it was important that a ratification team members shared the same purpose, shared the same vision for the treaty, shared the same desire to succeed in these goals. And so bringing together the like minds and the like vision really allowed for our work to be successful. We had, as I mentioned earlier, we had other places for the diverse voices to be a part of, but this work was very focused and very specific. We needed people, we've talked about how much work is involved. We needed people that were enthusiastic. They were excited to be a part of this work. They were interested in this work. They didn't mind traveling to the States. They didn't mind traveling to West Bank to go see how other people were managing their membership databases. They didn't mind connecting with going up to the interior to meet with our members from the Vernon area. They were excited, and that their excitement was contagious as well, because you want those good feelings to come into the meetings, into the gatherings, and people to feel even when you're tired. So we really looked for people that were enthusiastic. Um, but because this was new work and because there were challenges coming to our door all the time, we needed our people that were on this team to be resilient. They needed to be adaptable to changes. They needed to be able to work with different and sometimes difficult personalities. They needed to not take offense if somebody it wasn't in support of the treaty, or was challenging a system, and that they had the ability to bounce back and manage their stress. So resilience in the people that were on the team. A collaborator. We really had to get a lot done in a very short period of time. We needed an active team player. We needed someone that was inclusive, that wanted to share their ideas and build on other ideas and collaborate and say, okay, this is a challenge. This didn't work here, but let's figure out how to bring out this group of people. The last time we had a very a smaller audience. Why don't we try this? Going this way. Let's all take them golfing or something like that. So we really needed some that our ratification team committee to be collaborative. And I think that this next part is really one of the most important parts. We had to have fun and we had to laugh, because otherwise we just cry. No, just kidding. It was, yeah, there were tears for sure. There's not, I'm not, all joking aside, it was exhausting. But we did have fun, and we did laugh a lot and we did share a lot. And so, but humor was super important to help manage that stress. Um, we really worked hard on creating unique communications. We put out special postcards with special messages, and we highlighted the words that this had to be related to treaty and that their voice was important. We changed the sizes of our envelopes and things so that when the incoming mail came into a member's house, that it was different. It's like, oh, what's this? To really try to create a uniqueness from the information that was we put labels on there that would say in red, time sensitive, and um, we tapped into genealogy, say, hey, do you know who you are, who you're connected to, so that we could also learn. And then it really brought our community together in so many ways. As I mentioned in other speaking engagements, we started hosting Saturday breakfasts and orange juice and hiring one of our local cooks and newspapers, and then people just gather there, and then we would sit there at the table making sure that, and we would figure out who might need to have themselves enrolled, and then when it was time for ballots, making sure that everybody had the mail out for the ballot was accurate. We went to hospitals when there was newborns. We went to homes. We hijacked the buffet in Bellingham. We set up portable printers back in the day when there really wasn't portable stuff, but we made it portable. And we were there all day long. I think I gained probably about 25 pounds that weekend that we were at the buffet. I think that yeah, I think I ate so much on those days. But we fed the people as we would if they had come. But it was a way to adapt to supporting the Offlands members. As I mentioned, we had someone that we had hired to phone all the members, and that's where the province had given us some phone systems. And that wasn't as successful as we had hoped it would be, but it was still a mechanism that we had tried. Um, we kept doing encouragement for our goals. We kept a thermometer, which is why the thermometer is present there. Is that it was in our office, and it started at the very bottom with the little bowl at the bottom being sort of not filled, and then when we filled up that circle and we got to the next level, and then it was really nice to see the thermometer climb to the goal that we needed to. So we were using visual encouragements for us as well. Um, and as the message at the beginning was you need to be enrolled to vote. That was the biggest message. But as we got closer to the vote, we changed the message, vote, use your voice, vote yes or no, vote, but vote, just vote. Then as we got really close, we said, we think that this is a good deal from a self-governance perspective. We think that this is the treaty team and leadership and the ratification team and committee. This is from a land claim perspective, from an opportunities perspective. This is the best deal for the best value that we can get now. If we wait any longer, we're going to lose value. We're going to lose opportunities. The time is right now. And we said, push the vote to say, vote yes. So, and that was the last little bit. So, the ratification team was out there making sure that everybody got their ballots. We were going across one of the challenges was our US members getting their ballots across. And so we would get the ballots in envelopes and seal the envelope, like they would have their sealed ballots, and we put them in sealed envelopes and bring them across the border in time for the deadline. We had 218 eligible voters at that time. Um, and we enrolled, I think 80% was our goal. We enrolled 86%. So we surpassed our high threshold, and which meant we had 187 voters. Um, of those, I think, no, so we had yes, we had 187 voters. Of those who were eligible, 180 voted. So 7 people did not vote. And out of those 180, 130 said yes. And we were ecstatic to have all of our hard work pay off. It was an exhausting day, a nerve-wracking day to have that vote. And it was a resounding yes from our membership. 130 out of 180 said yes. So that is great. The day ends, and then the real work began. Fast forward 15 years later, when this April coming up to 16 years. I believe that we are in a good place. We've used our treaty well. We've flexed our treaty muscle. We've drawn down on our treaty in ways that have created opportunities for us. We've pushed the governments using our treaty to make sure that we have fair and equitable opportunity to succeed and improve the well-being of our people. Um, we have built on others' experiences as others have built on our experiences and our challenges and our successes. We are happy to admit that not all of it is glorious. But the one thing that was said to me, and I've repeated it, is that the beauty of this is that our successes are our successes. But our challenges, our failures are ours as well. What like any grown-up would ever do, you're accountable. We are accountable. We're gonna make mistakes, and we're gonna learn from those mistakes. But I think that we are ahead of it all, and we are creating opportunities for our members. Thank you to the the nations, Comox, Kitsilus, and Kitsim uh, and other nations that are negotiating, your advances that you have been making, while you learned from us from our experiences while you began this journey, you have now taken our journey, made it your own, and created some wonderful new advances and benefits and opportunities that we are now, Tsawwassen, are able to take advantage of. Um, an example is we are now currently doing our 15-year periodic review, and we have a lot to bring to this process because of Comox, Kitsilus, Kitsum, Kalem, and other treaty tables. Thank you, Heichka. It is an interesting and unique process, this treaty review, and we don't have a roadmap from it, but it is going to create some great advances for us, and really together working together as one, we are creating better opportunities, and we are changing the landscape for that relationship between the other levels of governments, because we're working together to help each other, not working together as one. Uncle Russell, we are free from the Indian Act, and we are doing it. Heichka Osium.
Awesome, Valerie. Um, Amazing. Thank you so much. You've hit on so many important points and given us some real good detail that people can reflect on going back. The people who were here and those who are going to come afterwards as well will benefit from this information as well. Valerie, you hit on so many points. I don't even know how we can start to pick out the highlights, and I don't want to cut into Ashley's time too much. But some of the things that you said early on about the importance for the First Nation to be driving the process when it comes to ratification is really key. And I'm hearing that from the nations that are going through the process right now as well. So anybody from BC who's online and Canada who's online, just keep your ears open to that and how important that is for success, is to have the nation who knows their community very well driving that process. You talked about all the moving parts, Valerie. That's so true. You've got membership code votes, constitution votes, treaty votes. And for us that are in it all the time, we get those distinctions. But for people who are our citizens who are voting, that it's, a lot of it's just Greek to them, that you've got to really make sure that they're understanding the reason for all of these votes and the importance for them to be participating in it. I really liked your conversation around the enrollment process and your own experience of you getting to know your people through that. It's really important. We worry a lot about capacity building, and we need to remember, I think, and Ashley probably is going to talk about this, but how much capacity we're building within our people through this process. Like, you move on. There's so many of us that just have continued to move through the nation. John Jack, who we'll hear from later on today, started off on our Constitution Committee straight out of university and is now our chief counselor. And just that capacity continues to grow. Using the matriarchs is really common. John, I actually have heard him talk about, he was our E&E coordinator, and he talks about our Nananexu strategy. So when we couldn't find people, our people are always moving around. We had them connected to their grandparents because grandmas always know where their grandchildren are. So that was really important. Also, you reminded me, Valerie, because you did present with thanks to the enrollment forum that the Treaty Commission put on before. That is online. The enrollment guide is online. There's some really valuable information in there as well. And I noticed the other day that our YouTube channel has the actual video of everyone's presentation. So a really great resource for everybody there as well. Again, just so much. I thank you so much for your presentation. It was extremely valuable. Thank you. Moving on to Ashley, my friend. Ashley is from the Comox First Nation. Really amazing. She's currently the treaty manager for Comox, among many, many other things. She's got a great background, not only in treaty, but in economic development, change management. She's an independent consultant, a young woman with endless energy. I can't believe all the things that you do, Ashley, but really appreciate it. Ashley and Coral and Kim have actually been very instrumental in helping to prepare the enrollment guide and the ratification guide for the Treaty Commission. So hands raised for that great work that you've done there, Ashley. And over to you to introduce yourself. And I see your presentation is up and ready. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you so much for inviting the Comox team to participate. There's so many moving pieces to the treaty, especially as we're like elbow neck deep in the ratification process right now. And it's been quite the journey. I really want to, thank Valerie. I mean, it's very hard to follow in your footsteps after your presentation. You've done a phenomenal job, and Comox wouldn't be where we are today without the amazing leadership of the modern treaty nation. So anytime that we've had questions or wanted to better understand lessons learned that your nations have gone through and felt, and been able to make your own mistakes. I love that, Valerie. Be able to make your own mistakes and change them. And that it really is the beauty of self-government, is to be able to, it's not perfect and it's not easy, but as we go through, we can celebrate those huge wins. We can make some mistakes along the way, but it's how we learn from those lessons and move forward in how we create success for the future of the nation. So my hands up, Haichka, Imot, Kasla, for all of the immense information that all of the modern treaty nations have provided to Comox. It's just made our jobs so much easier. And when we go to engage with our communities, they do get tired of hearing from us, and it's so great for them to have the modern treaty nations come in and share your lived experience, because that is what they want to hear. So today I am going to talk about really building the team for the vote. So today I'm going to talk about, I'll introduce myself, tell you a little bit about myself, talk about why a strong team matters, talk about those key components of building that team, the importance of capacity building, and then just my vision of the team's journey as we move through these phases of the treaty process. So a little bit about me. I am Comox First Nation, and have worked for the nation since 2014 in various capacities. Had the opportunity to come back and work for the nation in 2014 after I had my daughter, and got to work in economic development for a number of years. And then I transitioned to working with the treaty team and became an independent contractor, where I get to work with so many amazing clients. And I feel so grateful for the work that I get to do. And as much as I, enjoy getting to work with them, all of these, nations and associations, and I am learning so much from them as well. So feel very, very grateful for the work that I get to do. So why a strong team matters. So the treaty process is so complex, and I'm going to talk about the various phases of building that treaty team. So in my mind, there's like the negotiation phase of the treaty process, and then you shift into the ratification, the deep engagement phase. And all of these phases are very, very complex, and it requires informed leadership at all levels. So when I say informed leadership at all levels, we are all leaders on the team in our own way. And then also in Comox, we have, our chief and council sit at our internal meetings and our main tables and our strategy sessions, so that when we are out in the community, they have just as much knowledge as we do on the treaty team. And that, I think, is going to really create a lot of success and has created a lot of momentum for our ratification process. Having a well-structured team ensures strong negotiations, accurate information, allows for capacity building, and most important, that meaningful engagement. So we want to ensure that all of the individuals on our team have those tools in their toolbox to be able to respond to member questions, to ensure meaningful engagement. And it really helps nation members make an informed decision about the treaty. So our key components with our treaty team, we've got leadership sitting at the table. We've been able to sit with our hereditary chiefs, our heads of family, our knowledge keepers, and build up their capacity in learning about the treaty as well. We have an amazing communications team Melissa, Tiffany, Christy, Ashley, Coral, like we really are all the boots on the ground doing those engagements right now, and we wouldn't be where we are without that team. The technical and legal support. So not only in the negotiations phase of the treaty do we require, Mark Stevenson's expertise, Ron Frank's expertise, as well as other legal advisors. Kim Weber, we've got a member who is now a lawyer, and she gets to participate in all of these amazing pieces of the treaty. They transition to becoming communicators as well. And you'll see later in my slides, I talk about that. And the community outreach and capacity building, we really focused on the treaty team to build a team full of Comox members. So when I joined the team back in 2018, we had 1 to 3 Comox members that would sit at the treaty table. And now we have a team of, just on our core treaty team, at 8 out of 11 are Comox members. So that really helps build the transparency when you go to engage with members. So bringing people into the team and building their capacity really enables for a strong team. And don't underestimate, I know Melissa said this earlier, don't underestimate the amount of administrative and logistical support that is required throughout this whole process. Whether it is, team members registering people for quarterly meetings, or for the vote, or for, creating agendas for our internal meetings, and like all of those, ordering swag, like just thinking about all of the little activities lead up to a lot of work. Like I said earlier, it was really important for us to prioritize nation members for key roles, and really, bringing people in. And some of them aren't necessarily, they weren't out there saying, yes, we want treaty. It was like, oh, okay, well, we know a little bit about treaty. And once you start bringing one member in, and then they talk to their family, and then their family talks to their friends and family, more and more people are open to joining the treaty team. And really, having a strong team will create success. And I can't stress how important it is to provide the training, the orientation, the mentorship, and the knowledge sharing opportunities on the team, because that will continue to build capacity, continue to attract members and new members to join the team. Really build the skills for the long term. So look beyond the vote. So we've got now members on the treaty team that will play integral roles come post-effective date of the treaty, or even through the transition. So we've really, really worked to build the skills for the long term. And don't forget to leverage, external expertise to support the internal growth. So I think about, when each of us have joined the treaty team, we have relied on the expertise of people like Mark and Ron, on, what's in the treaty and why things were negotiated the way they were. And, expertise on groundwater and forestry and fisheries, so that we have the tools in our toolbox and we're confident when we're engaging with members. And develop a capacity plan. That was a huge focus of the treaty team, even prior to me joining. I know Melissa talks about, I think 2010, 2011, they were starting to look at, okay, how are we going to build the capacity of our people to ensure a successful transition? So we've just continued to carry that forward into capacity planning, organizational planning, and change management. And this has been a consistent message from the modern treaty nations, is have the right people for the right roles. So when I think about each member on our team, they all have unique characteristics and qualities that they bring to the table that make our team whole. So it's so important to have diversity in the team's perspectives. We have a treaty elder that participates. She grounds us. She keeps us whole. She keeps us sane. And we incorporate, youth into our key messaging and ensure those knowledge holders, hereditary chiefs, heads of family, and Melissa just said, don't forget that we need fun police. And on the team, just so you know, I am the fun police. I don't have my cup here today, but I was gifted for Christmas by one of our team members a mug that says fun police. Ultimately, the fun police just provides a sanity check around the budget and ensures we're on track for all of our activities and our deliverables, and really, coming back to balancing the experienced professionals with emerging leaders. So Mark has done a phenomenal job of, creating space for us to grow and take shape. And I haven't been on a team like this in all of my careers, and it's just been phenomenal. And ensure leadership is actively involved as they become the champions of the treaty. So I think of our leadership right now, they're posting on their social media, get out and vote, and this is why I'm voting for treaty. And so many members look to leaders about, what are you doing? How are you taking this? What is your approach? And so having the leadership involved is so integral. Really provide opportunities to support and sustain the team. So creating that strong organizational culture, like I just talked about, the treaty discussions can be so intense. And by having a team that you can go back to and say, wow, this was a really hard day, and that they're going to be there for you. They're going to cheer you up. They're going to bring you a coffee when you're not feeling well. They're going to call and check in on you. That is so important. You have to recognize and appreciate all of those contributions that the team members are making. I think about, it's not just our core team that we have. We have also been able to add an additional 10 individuals through the team, through the home visit team, through our E&E committee, through our ratification rep, as well as our planning committee for our big celebration. So it's been so great, and really bridge the gap between the treaty and the administration well in advance of the vote. So I know we've got Comox admin members on this call. I just think about the amount of work that we had to do for like lands technical and appendices, and the amount of work that Kara McCall and her team on her lands team, her small lands team, had to do to prepare us for the ratification was huge. So thank you, Carol, and your team. Couldn't have done this without you. And develop a change management plan. So we have been working with our staff and our members on change management. So what does the treaty mean? Like really starting at the root of it, like what is the treaty? What is the Constitution? Going through it, talking about how roles can change post-treaty and really, how we can make it our own. And starting to ease the tensions between, okay, well, there's this, potential huge change coming down the line. What does that look like? So really engage early and engage often with the admin staff. I would say the key success factors that help you get to that ratification phase is capacity planning, engaging the staff early and often, and change management planning and execution. By doing this early and doing it often, you're creating that trust and transparency and bridging that gap between the administration and the treaty team. And I have to say, like when we brought on our eligibility and enrollment coordinator back in 2021, Coral McKay, which you'll hear from later, she's no longer in that role. We've got Tiffany in that role. But she really, and Tiffany continues to do this, really bridge that gap between the administration and the treaty team. They become like the face of the treaty. They're enrolling members, they're answering questions, and it's not just about enrollment. So by having them have all of those tools in their toolbox is going to be so important. And once that trust is built, that knowledge transfer begins to happen between the treaty team and the administration. And this is the lesson learned that we learned from the modern treaty nations, is really start that knowledge transfer sooner rather than later, because it's going to be really key for that retention and the corporate memory moving forward. Keep engaging and building that relationship. It really creates champions. So just an example, we've had some Facebook questions come in on our social media about enrollment and what that looks like. And we're, getting back and forth to the members. And then we even have, staff coming in and saying, well, this is my perspective and this is how I see it. And they're really becoming champions of the treaty. And knowledge is power. So by having more people in the administration understand what the treaty is, you increase your chances for successful ratification. I talked about this earlier, but I really see the responsibilities of the team sort of in two phases. You've got the negotiations phase where you're negotiating the treaty, you're building that capacity, you're bringing more members onto the team, you're preparing for the campaign phase. You're starting to liaise with the administration, you're preparing them for potential changes to come, you're engaging with members, you're building that trust and transparency, and all while like doing all of the community planning. So land use planning, comprehensive community planning, visioning for a future outside of the Indian Act. And then you shift into the campaign phase. And that is, you're enrolling members and eligible members, you're holding the votes, you're undergoing the deep engagement with members. So I just wanted to provide some examples of like what our team looked like during the negotiations phase. So we have a fulsome team. I'll get you to flip to the next slide. So we've got like a bit of a org chart. So you see our people are at the top. We've got our chief negotiator, we've got myself, and then we've got all of our, Comox elder, our E&E coordinator, we have a land use planning and engagement specialist, and our TRM project consultants. We've got our treaty communications and our co-negotiator. And then we also liaise with, we have our intergovernmental relations director sit at our internals as well. She really helps us with a number of aspects of the treaty. So she's been a great addition. And then there is a huge connection with council. So we're really ensuring that we try and have all that we can at the table so that everyone is informed. So this is talking about the two phases and some key pieces that I wanted to talk about, like what happens sort of in between the negotiation phase as you're moving towards the campaign phase. I think we did ours in 4 months and it wasn't ideal. I think we wanted to do it, like Melissa said earlier, at least 6 months in advance of the vote. But, strike those committees and the home visit team. So you're going to strike your eligibility and enrollment committee. You're going to have an enrollment appeals board. You're going to strike your home visit team. You're going to strike your ratification committee. And as I said earlier in the negotiations phase, it's really important to be building that team with members of the nation so that when you do go to strike these committees and you do require an additional, 9 to 10 people, that you've got the trust and the transparency with the membership. So it's easy to get these individuals. Our E&E committee is phenomenal. Like we got the cream of the crop for our E&E committee. They understand the ancestral connections of the nation. They have a ton of transferable skills. It's been amazing. We've just struck our enrollment appeals board. We've got our own lawyer on there. And our home visit team has been amazing. They are out there, they're champions of the treaty, they're enrolling people, they're creating excitement, and it's been so great to have them. And then we've got our ratification committee rep, and I think she's still on the call, Rhonda. You're doing a phenomenal job. Your ratification rep really becomes that voice of the nation and ensuring, timelines are met and that, the vote date is set and ready, and ensures that, when these processes happen in a tripartite manner, that the nation's voice is heard. And then with all of those pieces in place and having each of those teams have the proper orientation and training and all of the tools that they need, then you can move into the campaign phase. So just being mindful of the time, I'm just going to do a quick overview of the committees. I'm not going to go into detail. I think these slides will be available after the meeting. So the enrollment committee, they're, taking tons of enrollment applications on a weekly basis. They're going to need to know, they'll be well-versed in who's who in the community. You're going to want a well-rounded team. People that the nation members trust is going to be really important because they are reviewing highly confidential information. The ratification committee, it is a tripartite committee. So the nation, BC and Canada sit on this committee. It's going to be really important for the nation member to have that strong voice and ensure that our messages are heard. And also, there's not always going to be agreement on the ratification committee. So you do need that trust and that transparent relationship with the parties as well, creating that safe space to have those difficult conversations. The ratification committee has a huge job. They've got so much information to get out in such a short amount of time that they are dealing with high stress timelines. And Melissa's done a phenomenal job of getting our home visit team together and trained them. They all have, we've got a very comprehensive orientation and training package. They're out there, they're providing the members and the eligible voters with all of the necessary information to make those informed decisions. They're getting people enrolled, they're getting people excited about the ratification vote. And of course, they're individuals that the people trust. And like Melissa said, our home visit team is so well-rounded that we even have people, helping out with social media. And I think there's 3 of them that do different social media. So we've got an expert in TikTok, an expert in Snapchat. This is for all the youth, and Instagram and Facebook. So it's been really great to see the team grow and flourish. So this is a little bit about our team now. So you see that we've got the ratification committee rep, we've got our E&E committee, we've got our home visit team, in addition to what we had before. This is my last slide. So I think the ultimate message here is like everyone on the team, whether they're a leadership or a negotiator or a manager, a technician, communications team, committees, in the campaign phase, it is all hands on deck. It's time to switch gears and dive into like a campaign and engagement mode. So Mark is, responding to, we're ensuring we get like all the legal responses, like he's becoming a communicator. Then we've got our boots on the ground team that are out there engaging with the members. And then we've got our committees, and everyone shifts into a different role, and it's all about getting the information out, getting people excited and ready for a successful ratification. So I'll leave it there.
Amazing, Ashley. Thank you. Thank you. And again, reminding me of the great presentations that you and others made at the Eligibility and Enrollment Forum that happened, and making sure that people go back and put all of this information together. This is literally gold. I think Valerie would agree with me that when we were going through, if we had all this kind of advice and more time, I think that we would have been in a great place. But despite all of that, our results were still very good. Ashley, you just hit on some really, really key messages in terms of the processes that go through and the phases that you go through and how your roles change throughout the negotiation and then into the ratification and campaign process. You hit on them all. The importance of all of the team. Don't underestimate the administrative and technical support. That is a ton of work, and probably the kind of work that people are doing right now that needs to be built upon, and you need that extra support because maybe the people that were doing that before are moving into different roles now. So it's really a good capacity building piece as well. Great segue into involving leadership and staff. It's something that I always talk about when we're talking about what's needed. You can't underestimate the role. Your last message of all hands on deck is so true. Everybody has got a role in this, and I'm really looking forward to hearing Kim and Clint this afternoon sort of expand on your segue into that, the importance of leadership being involved and having a say in all of that. Bridging the gap with administration was a real lesson learned for us, and I think that's something we've passed along to everybody, and I just appreciate that you're articulating that in a better way. I always say that, that some of the nations that are taking longer to get to treaty are feeling like, it's kind of been time wasted. It really hasn't. There's been so much opportunity and resources and time available for these nations, you nations, to be more prepared at effective date than our nations ever were. So, take advantage of those funds that are available, the kind of studies that you can get done, and, highlighting the capacity plan and the change management plan, really, really critical. I was talking to our chief counselor, John, who we'll hear from later on today too, and he was saying, even today, 15 years into treaty, we're saying we still need that capacity. And he said, geez, in that time, how many students could we have had now with master's degrees? So we're getting to that point where there's not as much excuse to not have that kind of capacity and to make sure that we're developing those plans to build capacity. So really, really an important and critical point. And thank you for raising it. Just so many other things that you raised. Both you and Valerie talked about, people, citizens, elders saying, are we ready? I've made presentations before and said, everything that we're doing, we think is the hardest thing. When we're negotiating the treaty, we think that's the hardest thing. And now that we've done that, it's going to get easier. Well, it doesn't, because then ratification comes along, and that's the hardest thing. But the point of all of that is that we can do this. So the question of, are we ready, is always absolutely, we're ready. And I heard one of our administrators, actually, when we were going through a ratification process, when that was coming up during one of their assemblies, she said, you know what? If effective date was tomorrow, we'd be ready. We can absolutely do this. So I think it's a really strong message that we need to keep reminding ourselves about the capacity that we do have and how much we know our own communities. So Valerie and Ashley, thank you so much for your golden presentations, tremendous information sharing that you've done with those online. And thank you always for stepping up so readily to help to share that information.